We are joined now by Sean Parnell, who was at the massive Trump rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, that ended July 13th with a assassination attempt. Trump went back, had an unbelievable crowd. Now, I'll get to that in a second. But first, Sean, have you recovered from Dak Prescott's late touchdown pass last night to beat your beloved Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh?
I knew you were going to lead off with a question like that, and I'll tell you it was a rough night here in Fort Parnell because not only did the Steelers fall to 3-2, backsliding 2 straight losses with Justin Fields at quarterback, but the impeachables, my fantasy team, unless Kareem Hunt comes off the bench tonight for Monday Night Football and turns in a 50-point game,
Yes.
It looks like the impeachables are going to fall to 3-2 as well. Not good. Not good across the board.
I'm in a tough spot in my fantasy league as well. I need some miracles to fall, and I'm going to fall to 3-2 also. But that is out there. Sorry for all the Steelers fans out there who had to hear about that. But let's go to the rally itself. I believe you spoke there. What was the environment like? What did it feel like? Take us, for those of us who were not there, which the vast majority of listeners, into that experience.
Well, I have to say it was crazy and it was surreal to be back there. I did a walkthrough the night before, and I'll tell you, and for all the listeners, the setup was a little bit different, but President Trump was absolutely insistent on that stage being in the exact same location. And I think that's because he wanted to send a message to the people of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that we're not finished yet. He wanted to make good on his commitment to them, but he also wanted to send a message to our enemies, both here and abroad, that as Americans, we don't bend the knee to fear. We don't bend the knee to tyranny. And come hell or high water, President Trump was standing on that stage and finishing what he started. And I have to say, I have a ton of respect for that man for doing it, because I wasn't crazy, and I know my wife wasn't crazy about going back to that place, but we felt like we had to go back there because we had a duty to go there, and President Trump clearly felt the same way.
Sean, always appreciate you being with us. Battleground Live podcast is on the Clay and Buck feed for everybody listening, and also we're going to have Sean filling in on this show around Thanksgiving time. So, Sean, you're going to be in charge for all 3 hours at the con, my friend. It's going to be exciting. In the meantime, what were some of the biggest takeaways from just that day, and also President Trump's speech, and all of what you were able to gather together? I mean, a lot of us weren't able to be there. So what did you walk away thinking and feeling?
Yeah, it was absolutely exhilarating on so many levels, because it was just one historic moment after the next. I'm sitting there in the crowd, and I hear, God Bless the USA, right? The song, that Lee Greenwood song that Trump walks out to. And I'm thinking, dang, this sounds really good. And Lee Greenwood walks out on stage 10 feet in front of me. He's saluting Trump. And I'm like, dang, this guy knows how to entertain. And of course, much of what Trump talked about, especially in the early phases of his speech, was Corey Compertore's family and the other folks in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania who were wounded. And he's got this opera singer coming out and everything else. And then there was a woman at one point, Buck and Clay, up in the stands who had a medical emergency. President Trump stopped his speech in the middle of that. And then 100,000 people, spur of the moment, started singing the Star-Spangled Banner. It was just an unbelievably powerful moment and a powerful night on so many levels. And again, not just a testament to President Trump's toughness, but a testament to the character of the people of Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, who also wanted to show up that day to send a message that we're not afraid. And, we're going to be heard. And it was just, I have to tell you both, it was amazing to be on that stage and look out over what was definitely 100,000 people. And look, I was on stage with President Trump 5 days before the November 2020 election in Butler County, almost at the same location, 65,000 people there. This was different. There was something in the air that was special. And it just leads me to feel real, real good about the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in this election cycle.
Okay, let's dive into that, because Pennsylvania really well. We're talking to Sean Parnell. I encourage you to listen to his podcast as part of the Clay and Buck Podcast Network. 2016, it was an earthquake that Trump won Pennsylvania in the political class. 2020, they pulled out all the stops to try to find a way to win it back. The absentee ballot requests were through the roof. In terms of data, what I have seen, Sean, is that the enthusiasm for Democrats when it comes to absentee ballot requests, nowhere near what it was in 2020. And for people out there who say, well, there's not a COVID going on, people are going to vote in person more, Republicans have actually had similar numbers when it comes to absentee ballot requests in both 2020 and 2024. So that would cut against that argument. What are you seeing on the ground? What do you feel? And what, from a data perspective, does the math look like to you?
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, I've said here on this show before that Pennsylvania is a state that closes late and closes fast. And now you're seeing that play out. Well, so what does that really mean? Well, look, Democrats can win this state without a single Republican vote. Now, we've closed the voter registration deficit in Pennsylvania by over 50%, 650,000 plus more Democrats in 2020 than there were Republicans. That number is now 325,000 more Democrats than Republicans. Still a big number, right? But the point is that we are in order for Republicans to win this state, you've got to win moderate Democrats and you've got to sway independents. Every single poll that I've seen, not just between Trump and Harris in Pennsylvania, but especially between McCormick and Casey, has shown probably two months ago, McCormick down anywhere between 7 and 10 points in Pennsylvania. Well, now in almost every single poll, they're tied. And that tells me that moderate Democrats and independents are breaking Republicans. So the state is closing late and it's closing fast, as it typically does. Another thing that I need people to pay attention to is look at the counties of Erie, Pennsylvania, which is in the northwest of Pennsylvania, and Northampton, which is in the northeast of Pennsylvania. Those are two blue-collar Union Democrat counties. They are the bellwethers of the state of Pennsylvania. And President Trump is up in these two bellwether counties on not just the top line polling, but on all of the issues. From the border, he's up 15. On inflation, he's up 7. On the economy in general, he's up 6. So issue after issue after issue in these blue collar Union Democrat counties are breaking Trump. And again, you see that play out in the polls as well, Clay, as well, Buck, with Kamala just is suffering. She is hemorrhaging men. Right? And I cannot see for the life of me a blue-collar Union Democrat, somebody who's worked with their hands their entire life, in either of those counties saying, yeah, I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris. It's just not going to happen. And last point I'll make about the data. You look at the current mail-in request data. Democrats, 945,000 mail-in ballot requests. Republicans, 419,000. Independents, 176,000. Now, in 2020, Republicans had 668,000 requests, 524,000 returns. Democrats, 1.6. At 1.5 million returns. So in 2020, we lost the vote by mail by nearly 1 million. But we're actually doing a lot better than we were in 2020, because let's say of those 176,000 independents who have requested a mail-in ballot, let's say 40% of them break our way. We are going to be well over 500,000 ballots requested in 2024, which is more than we had in 2020. And Democrats, by contrast, they need that floor of 2020 mail-in ballots to be successful in that state, and they're not there yet. And at 945,000, they got to get to 1.5 million returns. The clock is ticking, guys, and I just don't think that there's enough time for them to make it up.
Sean, what the ground game that Trump has, how is it looking? How is it in these final weeks? And you're giving us a sense of what spots in the state should be highlighted to try to bring it across the finish line. But is the infrastructure there, the door knocking, the ads on TV? I mean, what are you seeing in terms of that?
Well, the ads on TV are just the market is absolutely saturated, and it's particularly tough to run ads in Pennsylvania running a statewide campaign because there are 5 different media markets, whether it's Philadelphia, Scranton, York, Pittsburgh, Erie, unbelievably expensive. But yeah, there's a political ad on TV every couple of seconds here. But the ground game for President Trump is really, really, really strong. And again, by contrast, look at Kamala Harris. You don't get the Teamster endorsement. You don't get the endorsement of the National Firefighters Union. Now, yeah, that might be a political hit optically for Kamala Harris, but when they don't endorse, you don't get their infrastructure. You don't get their door knocking. You don't get their ballot chasing. You don't get union organization. And that's going to hurt her in Pennsylvania. And again, you see that playing out in the polls, right? So not only are people inclined to, I think, vote for Trump because they're hurting where, like, on kitchen table issues in their pocketbooks, but Kamala's not going to have the ground game that old Scranton Joe from Pennsylvania had. And, that's another thing. At the top of the ticket, most people in Pennsylvania that aren't tethered to politics every day are looking at Scranton Joe and saying, hey, he's one of us, old moderate Joe Biden, works across the aisle. Kamala Harris is not Joe Biden in that regard. And so she's got all sorts of problems in Pennsylvania. I think it's pretty clear now that Kamala has a Pennsylvania problem. But I say all that to say, we've got to campaign like we're 10 points down. We got to sprint across the finish. I mean, all of these things are good, but we're in the execution phase of this election operation, and we got to close the deal. We got to get the ball across the goal line.
Sean, you making a football analogy there, and this is where Buck has said for some time, I automatically trust college football fans more, NFL fans more. If you like football, I figure you can't be that bad of a guy or gal. I just come back, and I know I started with you with the Steelers question. I just come back to what I see on the ground. I don't know if you saw me post this, but for the Georgia-Alabama game, the sign said, Georgia fans love Kamala. And all the Georgia fans on social media said some insults just cut too deep. They had a big rally for the college Democrats at the Auburn-Georgia game on the campus in Athens. Nobody shows up. Regular, everyday football fans, you see them in Pennsylvania a lot. They're the backbone, I think, of much of that blue-collar mindset. They're not showing up and voting for Kamala Harris. And I just think a lot of people are slowly realizing it. And then her outreach. I mean, Sean, how many Steeler fans do you think listen to Call Her Daddy Howard Stern and watch Stephen Colbert? Like, how is she going to change their mind going to those outlets?
She's not. And you're right. If you go to any sort of SEC game, Trump shows up at Alabama, Georgia, and the crowd goes wild for him. And I think the reason why the crowd goes wild is that people that are attending those college football games, they're just normal. They're not politicos like us, right? They're just normal people. They're really struggling. They look at life 3 years ago and said, hey, life was pretty great 3 years ago under Trump. It was easier. Life now, it sucks, not just here domestically, but the world is on fire. And I just, I cannot see Kamala Harris or Walz showing up at a college football game and getting nothing but just nonstop boos.
It's a great point. There isn't a stadium in America where Kamala Harris could show up and be cheered like Trump is cheered all over the country at football games. It just doesn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, and this is why I say he's the most, I'm obviously a Trump guy, but this is why I say he's the most electrifying political figure of my lifetime. And I think there's a political underpinning to all of this, is that the next generation, these kids that are 18 to 25 years old, in many ways, they've been priced out of the American dream. That was not so 3 years ago under Trump, when you have mortgage interest rates at 2.5%, where you could graduate from college, get a job working for maybe 45, 50 grand a year and afford to buy your first home and earn your way into the American dream. These kids today, they don't have that same opportunity. And we're at risk here in our country, guys, of, because every parent wants to say to their children, hey, I want my kids to have a better life than I did. But we're at a point in time in this country where that might not be the case for the first time in a very long time. And I think these kids are waking up to it. And I just think they're not going to be voting for Tim Walz or Kamala Harris.
Sean Parnell, everybody.
Right.
Sean Parnell, go check out Battleground Podcast on the Clay and Buck Network. How do you listen? You subscribe and you go to the iHeartRadio app. You download that, listen there, or wherever you get your podcast. Sean, thank you so much, man. Hopefully we'll be having a Pennsylvania victory celebration with you soon.
Hopefully. Take care, guys.
Hopefully. Otherwise, it's going to be sad. It's going to be a sad day in Pennsylvania for all of us. Look, my fellow gun owners, if you want to get better at shooting without spending money on ammo or time at the range, I have the thing for you. Get yourself a Mantis X. Nearly every Mantis X user, 94% of them, see improvement in their shot and aim within 20 minutes of using Mantis X. This is an at-home training system you use with your own gun to do dry fire practice. It's high-tech, but very easy to use. It's a gizmo that gives you real-time feedback on your shooting technique. I've used it many times, and let me tell you, trigger pull, trigger squeeze, it is so often the difference between being an accurate shooter and being somebody who just feels like they can't get better at the range, spending all this money. And I'm telling you, try the Mantis X. Members of the Marines, Army, and Special Forces all use Mantis X, and they're the most effective in the world. You'll be amazed at how quickly you'll improve your shooting accuracy. Get yours today. MantisX.com, MantisX.com.